Okay guys, so tonight's homework is going to be on allusions, as well as a little bit about the current section we're reading and what to look for. So you might have to do a little bit of extra research on the internet with tonight's activity. So just make sure that you have room to add another tab to your web browser and do just a Google search to help you finding your answers. Because I'm worried that maybe some of you might not be as well read to help with the allusions activity at the end. You'll see what I mean when we get there. All right. So currently right now, we're reading the part in the novel where it's the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah, and it starts to take on a newer meaning for most of the prisoners in the camp, except for Ellie. So he has a really hard time taking part in the prayer and the celebration, because in fact he starts to accuse God for what's happening around him and starts to feel strength in his hatred towards God. So we start to see a major shift in his faith. Again, remember the character at the beginning of the book, what Ellie was like with his faith and how religious he was, to now and his intense feelings of hatred, and how different his celebration of this holiday is now versus at the beginning of the book. There's also another inspection that happens, and at this point, Ellie's father is barely surviving. So that's a major piece of the book is his major fear that his father will not survive the next selection. And he's just hoping that his dad will live through the selection and continue to be with him. And in fact, his dad does survive and live through it. Ellie also sees his old friend Akiba, and this is for the last time he saw him alive. But that's an important part of the story. Just be paying attention to that part. So, like I said just a minute ago, he does survive the latest inspection, and they're able to kind of rely on each other for strength in the fact that they're still together and they're still alive. And then Ellie also goes through a really painful surgery on his foot to try and help alleviate the painful swelling that he's experiencing. And while he's in the infirmary, the word comes to the camp that the Russians are getting closer and closer, and that the prisoners have to evacuate immediately. And, Ellie's faced with a very real decision. Do I stay here in the infirmary with the sure intent that they're probably just going to kill everybody that's left here in the infirmary, before they take off? Or do I, stay with my father and move to this next camp? And he does make the decision to leave with his dad. And, there's a very ironic twist about what happens to those that do in fact stay behind in the infirmary. So be paying attention for that in the novel as well. Okay, so as we read, I want you to be keeping a track of the characters that we've already been introduced to, as well as any of the newer characters and the main events happening within the story. And because today we're talking about what allusions are, I know we've talked about it in class occasionally, but we've never really had like a true lesson on it. So I'm hoping that after we talk about it and use our knowledge at the end of tonight's video, that you'll actually be able to be paying attention and look for it as we read. I try and point things out to you guys as much as possible, but it's good if you can start identifying it. And again, as a good reader, look for those greater meanings. There's a reason sorry, that didn't really make sense. I need to pronounce my words. Okay, there is a reason why writers use allusion, as well as any other kind of literary device, figurative language, etc., because it has deeper meaning. It adds deeper meaning. So be looking for those things and try and piece them out. And it's okay if you don't know what he's referring to. I know that there's sometimes in novels where there's stuff that even I don't know, but what does a good reader do? If you see something you don't recognize, that you don't understand, you should look it up. You should investigate, and because that's going to help your comprehension of the story itself. Just like at the beginning of the novel when we were reading and learning all the new Jewish terms, and we saw the word Zionism. Well, that was an allusion. That was a big piece, and you guys didn't know what that word meant, so I asked you guys to look it up. That's what a good reader should do. If you don't know something, start becoming a super sleuth and search out the answer, because it will help your understanding. And then also start to notice the cause and effect relationships happening in the novel and how that kind of progresses the plot. And we're going to do an activity in class. Hopefully we have time to do that tomorrow. That's my plan anyway. We're going to do an activity in class talking about the plot and the characters we've seen, throughout the book, and how we see the cause and effect relationships with those actual characters. So we'll do that as a group activity tomorrow, but be paying attention to it as we read for sure. Okay, so what is allusion? And this is coming straight from your LA vocab packet. Handy dandy, that's why I told you not to lose it. So, allusion is a reference to a well-known historical person, place, or thing, or event in a story. So writers often include allusions in order to add deeper meaning to the subject about which they're writing. So because Night contains a lot of allusions to the Old Testament and things revolving around the Jewish faith, because of the experience that Ellie and his family has, because they're Jewish and they're singled out by the Hitler and the Nazi Party for extermination. A lot of the references come from that, and probably too because I think Ellie's trying to make a statement about his journey through his faith as he goes through on this, through this experience. So, something to be thinking about. Alright, so here's what I would like for you guys to do. You're going to create a T-chart. We do this in class all the time, so this should not be new. But you're going to make a T-chart, just like you see on the next slide, as we've been doing with all of these different video concepts. You're going to write down the examples from the text, and then off to the side, you're going to, in the larger portion of your T-chart, you're going to comment on those allusions and their purpose in adding meaning to both Ellie's experiences, but as well as yours as the reader. So you may need to search the web in order to further understand the allusions themselves. Some of you might have knowledge. If you're well read in the Old Testament, you might be able to do this on your own. If you have great historical knowledge of early human history, you might be okay. Otherwise, just pop open another tab on your web browser and do some quick searches. And there's only 3 examples, so it's not like, again, it's not like I'm asking you to do like, some major work here. Now, you do not have to write what you see in the red text on the side of the T-chart that you're going to be writing your comments on the allusions. So I'm using the red text to help guide you and tell you what you should be looking for. So you don't have to write that red part. In fact, that part should remain blank until you start filling in your own comments and response. So your example from the text is on this side. At the time, it was still possible to obtain immigration permits to Palestine. So I don't know why that's missing a quotation mark at the end. My bad. But write down that example real quick. It's a nice short example. This is from the beginning of the book when Ellie is asking his father, or begging his father to move, to sell everything and to move. And this was also the time when we looked up the word Zionism in class. So if you don't remember what the word Zionism means, go ahead and do just a quick Google definition, and that will help with your answer on this side. So again, remember, you don't have to write what's in red text. That's where your answer and comments on the allusion are going to go. So just comment on what this is talking about, the idea of immigrating and moving to Palestine. And again, reference Zionism within your answer here. Okay, moving on. The next example, here came the rabbi, his back bent, his face shaved, his pack on his back. His mere presence among the deportees added a touch of unreality to the scene. It was like a passage from some book, some historical novel about the captivity of Babylon or the Spanish Inquisition. So obviously they're referencing captivity of Babylon, Spanish Inquisition. That's what I would research. If you don't know anything about either of those 2 pieces, I would just do a quick little search, quick little Google search, and reference that in your piece. And remember, we talked about this particular area in class. Those of you that aren't doing independent reading, we talked about it anyways. About the rabbi and the fact that he, had his face shaved, and what that really meant to Ellie as he watched him pass on that day where everyone was leaving the ghetto. So yeah, so that's what you should research on that one. And then finally, our last example, how I sympathize with Job. I did not deny the existence of God, but I doubted his absolute justice. So if you don't know who Job is and why you might sympathize with him, you might have to look that up. Otherwise, you should be, if you know, then you should be okay with answering that piece. So I will check your answers. Also, I think I'm asking you to fill in a little piece on this in your digital whisk, so that might be a bonus question, though, but we will check your answers and talk about this, have a class discussion tomorrow. Thanks, guys. You are done. Don't forget to do the digital part, And I'll see you tomorrow.